Hi, a quickie about prostitution. I think prostitution suffers from the same problem that the concept of monopoly suffers from in modern economics, or in propaganda economics, propagandomics. And that is that the definition is arbitrary. So if you look into economics, you find that in modern economics they wanted to define a monopoly, and they went through a whole list of ambiguous, contradictory rules that they made up, a whole list. And for example, if a company has a market share of over 30%, then it is a monopoly. And they made this list so elaborate that it turned out that no market was actually a monopoly except for potatoes or something, I don't know. And of course this gave the government a perfect excuse to intervene in all markets, because there were monopolies everywhere you looked. And of course government is itself a monopoly. So it's logical that they project that, and they're unaware of it, so they see monopolies everywhere. And if someone comes up with a theory that says there are monopolies everywhere, then I think, that sounds very plausible indeed. And they give him some more money, and that's what the guy knew when he was going to cook up this thing. He felt that there was an opportunity there. But these markets can be very flexibly defined. So for example, if you say company X has a monopoly on colas, then you could also say, because it has more than 30% market share in market for colas, but you could also say, well, but in the market for sodas it does not have this market share. And you could even go further and say, on a market for beverages or demoisturizing fighters, you can make it as big as you want. Then the market share goes down, of course. And this is how the government plays this game. So they go to some company and say, well, you have a monopoly in the market for colas. And then the company like, oh shit, there comes the fines. And what they do is they give a lot of money to the government, and then the government says, well, let me look again. Okay, well, maybe we can redefine the market to looking at it again. And it's a market for beverages, really, is it? Yeah, maybe you don't have a monopoly after all. And that's how this goes. And lots of room for extortion and manipulation. Now the Austrian economists who are really interested in economy said, like, this is a strange definition, let's find a better definition. And the definition they came up with was, a monopoly is a monopoly as it is granted by an exclusive right to produce or sell something granted by the local ruler, backed by violence. So if some count fought a battle for the king, then the king said, okay, you have the exclusive right to sell and produce candles in my territory, the territory that I control. And of course he could get his profits up by that. And that is a clear definition of a monopoly. There is no ambiguity. If you want to know if you're in the monopoly, you just start producing candles, or if you have some funny thing that gives light also, but it's not a candle, if you want to know you trespass the monopoly, you just start producing it, and if you're thrown in jail, then you were inside a monopoly, and otherwise you were not. So either you are free to produce it and to compete with existing parties or not. So it's a binary thing, and then you have a clear definition, and it's not just it's nice to have a clear definition, but also you cannot build any solid theories on quicksand definitions. You need to have know what you're talking about, basically. you have more or less the same things when it's a second tangent, by the way. The first economics tangent, and now I get the food tangent. Then I go back to prostitution. So there are chemicals in my food, people sometimes say, and then I always worry. What do you mean chemicals? Of course, food is chemicals. I mean, what do you exactly mean by chemicals? And of course they can never define that, because mother's milk is chemical. I mean, everything made of atoms and molecules is chemical. And if you take a molecule from either mother's milk or from crude oil, and it's 2 carbon atoms, you cannot tell one from the other. You can say, oh, this is a natural one and this is a chemical one. There are only atoms. So, yeah, you can say, well, if it says on the food description E225, then it's a chemical. But it could be that E225 is just salt or something. Is salt a chemical, or is it a natural? It is very arbitrary. And I think you have to stop right there before you go on, if you don't have a clear definition, because it is it's very tricky stuff. And usually when I say this, the debate ends with, well, you know what I mean. And that is always, there's this frustration, like I cannot define it, and you can topple everything I throw at you, but you're just trying to counter what I'm saying. But I really don't know what is a chemical, and I really don't know what you mean with a monopoly if you use this propaganda economics definition. And now to go back to prostitution, I think this suffers from the same problem, because everyone I heard debating this failed to give a definition of what they were talking about in the beginning. For example, suppose some woman wants a very expensive diamond ring from a guy. Is that prostitution or not? From a boyfriend? Is it prostitution or not? I mean, there are aspects of this in every relationship, I would argue, because women are naturally interested in a man's status and wealth, which men are often peacocking, excellently dropping their Ferrari keyring in the bar, or they show off their physical representative, their height, which is closely correlated to income. They show that off, and men are often interested in a woman's beauty and capacity to give birth and feed his offspring, so attractive hips and breasts. Now, if you're in a relationship and you ask yourself as a guy, would she have loved me without my provider capacity, or as a woman without my beauty? I think if you're really honest, you have to deny this. That would have been a deal breaker if you were unemployed bump without any self-esteem, for example, or if you were a real handicapped, misformed lady in a wheelchair. And I think that this quite normal thing in a relationship, that women are interested in status in a man and wealth, and men are interested in physical beauty. You see in every relationship, and prostitution is just a very base form of that. So I would say, since there's then prostitution in every relationship, you can more or less stretch it any way you want it, and some relationships you could really wonder, how is this different from prostitution? And I think we need some kind of revolution, like the Austrian economists who came by and said, well, we just define it like this, and then it is clear what is meant by it. I think you need something like that with prostitution as well, otherwise it will be unambiguous what you're talking about. And you can say, well, you know what I mean, but I'm gonna tell I don't know what you mean, and come up with a clear definition first, and then you can build on something that is not quicksand. All right, thank you. Let me know what you think. Bye bye.